one of the defining moments in my nursing journey so far. Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. For all of you guys who don't know me, hi, I'm Jazzy. If you're not subscribed to my channel, don't forget to subscribe so you can see more videos like this one. Don't forget to also give this video a thumbs up and comment down below any requests that you may have. Saying that, getting that out of the way, let's get into this video. If you watch my videos, I'm probably always sipping coffee. So we had this patient on our unit in medicine. I was working a service worker shift in medicine. The constants had to go on break, but then another constant had to walk another patient down. So it was kind of like they were all busy. So I was like, I can relieve the constant with this patient. In this case, he wasn't violent or anything like that. He was just very impulsive. I would say more confused. And would just get out of bed, and he was a fall risk, and if nobody was watching him, he would just fall, so we had to put a constant on him. But he was the sweetest guy. We'll call him Jeremy. Jeremy, I go and I sit on the chair, so his bed's here, and it's a 4-bedroom room, and his bed is right over here, and there's 2 chairs, one right beside him and one over here. So he was watching his TV, so I was like, I'm not gonna bug him, so I sat the chair farthest to him until I look over at him, and he gave me the sweetest smile in the world. And that just made me feel like, you know what, I'm just going to interact with him. He seems like he's fine with me being there, so he gave me a smile, so I was like, I'm going to go chit-chat with him. So I got up and I sat next to him, and while I was getting up, I looked straight ahead, and being the bookworm that I am, I saw a stack of books. So I picked one up, and I was like, because he was reading this certain book. I can't even remember the name at this point. Said I was going to remember because I wanted to buy it for later. And I went to go pick it up, and I was like, so I see you're reading this. Is it good? Blah, blah, blah. He's like, oh, yeah, it's good. But Jeremy has an issue with speaking. I'm not too sure about his history, but it seemed like maybe he had a stroke where he couldn't really vocalize too well, and he almost got exhausted talking a lot too. So I didn't like to ask him too many questions. I would just kind of engage in a conversation that didn't have to go 2 ways. I was like, yeah, and he's like, yeah, I totally recommend. I was like, awesome. And I was like, and you got the game here. So he was laying down back in his bed, and the TV was right in front of him, and he was watching the hockey game. Now, the thing with this hockey game, the hockey game was actually broadcasted the night before. I knew everything that was going to happen. I knew our team was going to win. But that was the first for him. And I didn't want him to know that. So I just wanted him to enjoy it. I didn't want to go and spoil it for him and be like, oh yeah, they won. They won good that night. No, so I was like, oh, you even have the game on. Oh, interesting. Let's see how this goes. So I was sitting beside him, and we would cheer, and this was a really good game, by the way. This was like a 7-2 game or something, so they got to score a lot. So every time they'd score, like, we'd cheer, I would like high-five them, everything, and then it started getting to the point where, like, I'd be caught up in the books or whatever. I'd hear them score, and I'd look over at the TV, and I'd be like, Jeremy, like, you're supposed to give me a nudge, wink, wink, when they score, you gotta let me know. Sometimes I'd look away, and then every time I look away, they'd score. I made, like, the joke that, like, I'm the bad luck charm, like, I have to not watch the game, and I knew they were gonna win, though, so I was just, doing it for him, and it was just awesome. And then, like I said, we were in a 4-bedroom room that the girl in front of us, we're gonna call her Maggie, her son was visiting her, and he kept, like, they were getting in on it too. They're like, oh, they scored, yeah, woo, and like, they were scoring, and her son left because we were only allowing hour visitations at this time, and Maggie continued with, being interested in the game, even though I know she's never watched probably hockey in her life. That's an assumption. I know that's bad, and she probably doesn't even know what team we're cheering for, but just the fact that we were having fun, she was having fun, and she'd even be like, oh, they did it, woo, go, good job, like, it just brought so much life to that room for that short amount of time that I was his constant. My last day of that set, and I had like 4 days off, and throughout my set, I would just think about him. Like, it would just make me happy. Or I'd see like a book, and I'd be like, oh, I know Jeremy would love this book. Or I'd see he really loved National Geographics. I would see like the National Geographics at like Walmart or like grocery shopping. I'd be like, oh my god, Jeremy would love this. Because he loved space and dinosaurs and all that stuff that I am like so giddy about, he did. So we just connected on such a good level, and it was just such a positive interaction. It warmed my heart. It was just one of those interactions. It might not be much for my first story, but for me it just meant the world, and to him it meant the world, and it's one of those interactions that I still am like, I thank Jeremy, because that was one of those moments for me where I'm like, I am in the right career. It's not always medication, and it's not always giving them, handling their pain or you know, dealing with wounds. It's also that interaction with them, that knowing that they're not alone, that there is somebody there that relates to them. And, you know, and sometimes a lot of these, like, especially in the unit I was working, it's a lot of older people that sometimes us young people, we don't give them the time of day. And so when a young person actually takes the time, they feel like it means the world to them. So that was a huge interaction for me, and it was definitely one of the defining moments in my nursing journey so far. So story number 2. This is when I was working postpartum. I had just started at the hospital. I was working the antepartum postpartum, so I was the only service worker, so I was working 2 floors. And we had this patient, I'm going to say her name is Mila. Mila was in our antepartum part of the hospital. She was with us for like at least a month. But I just developed such a connection with her because I would go in every day to grab like the linen bags, and every day I'd see her there, and we just started talking. And then eventually got to the point where we weren't talking anymore. We were doing puzzles together, and I was skipping lunches to do puzzles and read books with her, and developed such a connection in her month there. And I remember it was my first time like working, like it was my first time at the hospital, so I didn't know a lot of people, and Mila was like a friendly face to me that every single day I went to work, she was just there, and it just made me so excited to go to work, to see her, because we had just become such good friends. Her month there, like I said, like there was times where I was going on lunch break and I'd be like, Mila, I just talked to your nurse. She says you're good. You don't have any exams today. Do you want a tea? Do you want a donut? What can I get you? And I would bring her food, or sometimes I'd get her, even if it was like a pudding cup, like I was always helping her out. Like we developed such a good connection. Well, leading up to her delivery, I was kind of getting sad because I knew I was gonna miss her because she wasn't gonna be there anymore. But I was like, I didn't want to miss the delivery of her baby too. Like I was so close to her at this point. I was like, I want to be here. Like I want to be at work. And I was like getting sad closer to the end because like I knew she wasn't gonna be there anymore. But at the same time, I was like, congratulations, like move on with your life, like have an awesome life with your baby. It was the day before, and we found out that she was going to deliver the next day. And I remember I came in and she told me everything about it. Like they were preparing her, they were getting her on the fetal monitor, everything. Like we were so excited, and then she tells me, yeah, he's coming out tomorrow. And now at this point I didn't know what the gender was. She did, her husband didn't either, but she didn't want to tell us because she wanted it to be a surprise. And like again, we were very close at this point that I feel like she was like my little sister. I was like, oh my god, like I remember I was so excited. But my thing is that I was at the end of an onset, so I was like about to go on my days off. So I was like, oh my god, like I don't want to miss this. So I remember I picked up the next day. I went home at 3 o'clock the day before. I was like, oh my god, Mila, you got this. I'm like, if anything, like I'll see you in the morning. I'm here tomorrow. Even if you, let's say they do the C-section in the middle of the night or something, like for some odd reason, I was like, I'm gonna see you tomorrow. Like I'm there. And I do my rounds and I'm doing the linen bags, and I'm trying to get in to see her to like know what time they're taking her down and everything. But doctors are coming in and out. I'm like, oh my god, I can't talk to Mila. Like, I just want to know what's going on. My fear was that they weren't going to take her until later in the day, and I'm done at 3, and I'd go home and I'd never meet her baby, and like I wouldn't ever see her again. So I was like very like uptight. I was like, oh. So I kept going on with my day, and I'm like, oh my god, please come out in time. So eventually like the unit clerk's like, Jasmine, can you take they asked me, like told me her last name, they're like, can you take Mila's stuff to her room? She's in so-so room in postpartum. And I'm like, yeah, I'm on it. So I went across, and when I opened the door, she was there, and she was sleeping. But I didn't see her at that time. I finally met her husband. So like you gotta see at this point, like I met him through FaceTime, and I saw her family that's not in the country, like they live in another country. Like I met her family on FaceTime. Like that's how close we were, that she would like FaceTime when we were like doing puzzles and stuff together, and she introduced me and stuff. Finally saw him, and I don't know how he knew it was me, but like I want to say like he already knew because we were like practically like family. But I want to say it was like my name tag, but he goes, oh my god, Jasmine, it's so nice to meet you. Oh my god, like you have no idea what you did for Mila. Like she was so happy. Like she just loved your presence. She loved hanging out with you. She always talked about you. And I was like, my heart was like all warm. I was like, oh. Never met because he would work during the day, which is when my shift was, and then when I'd go home, he'd come in the evening because that's when he had time off to go see Mila while she was in the hospital. And then I see her and the baby's not there, and I'm like, where does the baby go? They're like, oh, he's in the nursery. Now that she's sleeping, they're just cleaning him and everything. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, he's like, can you come back in like half an hour? At this point, it's like 2:15. I'm done at 3, and I'm like, oh my god, like I just want to see this baby, like before I go, say goodbye to Mila. Like, she knew I was becoming a nurse too. Like, this is something I've never said, but like when I would hang out with her too, she would actually test me. Like, that's how good friends we were. She would actually grab my flashcards and like test me, and so she was like so on board with my nursing journey too. And like, we would make jokes that for her next baby, like I'd be the nurse and stuff like that. So finally, it was the end of my shift. I walk in there and I look down, and there's her baby boy. Because she was always hooked up to the fetal monitor so we could hear his heartbeat. So I was like, oh my god. I was like, I've heard your heartbeat for 1 month now, and I can't believe I'm finally meeting you. And then I looked at her and I'm like, I can't believe how you're feeling. Like, I can't even imagine how you're feeling right now. And she looks at her husband, she's like, can you pass me my bag? And she goes and she grabs one of the cards from her Bible, and she's like, this is for you. She's like, read it when you go. And I was like, honestly, she's like, no, she's like, you deserve it. Like, she's like, just open it really quick. Don't read it until after you leave, but open it really quick. She got me a Starbucks card, and behind it, she like made the joke. She's like, now coffee's on me, because I would always buy her coffee. And I was like, oh my god, like I felt so bad taking the Starbucks card from her, and read the card, and I actually have it hanging in my office now. Like, the sweetest words. Like, it's been a year now since her baby boy would be a year, and I just hope that, you know, everything's going well, and I hope that they're healthy, and I hope that they're really having the time of their life as a family of 3. But yeah, that was story number 2, and a big moment for me that just warms my heart. So when I started my nursing career, I always wanted to go into postpartum. Every time people talk to me, I was like, I'm gonna be a pediatric or nursery nurse. It wasn't until they pulled me from a service worker in women's and pulled me up to medicine that I really branched out, and I'm so thankful for that, because I am now the person that I am because of that. It really made me change as a person and become stronger. I now am proud to say that I am actually one of the few crazy people in the world that wants to work in palliative. And I had lost my great-grandmother maybe 5-6 years prior, and I loved my great-grandmother. She meant the world to me. I was working on medicine, they had pulled me there, and I was walking by this room, and there was this little old lady sitting there. We're gonna say her name was Ingrid. Just a hoot. She was a hoot. And she didn't have a constant, but the person next to her had a constant. The constant would always end up talking to her all the time, because she just would talk your ear off. Like, she just loved talking. And at this point, like, she would repeat the same story over and over. I walked by this room and I see Ingrid. It was like a flashback in my head. It reminded me of my great-grandmother from the moment I saw her. Yeah, so it ended up being her constant, and we just hit it off. Like, we just hit it off. Like, she would tell me the same story over and over about her days as a teacher and her daughters and her new granddaughter. That we were in the middle of a pandemic, so her daughter could not come visit her, or her granddaughter, because of the pandemic. She was also very upset that she told me about her husband. Her husband was also, at that time, from what I remember, she was the caregiver. Like, she would help him out. He was, I believe, in a wheelchair. So she was always worried about him, always worried about her cats. She always wanted to see her cats. So I take her out, and I remember it got to a point where she even stopped smoking because we would go out so frequently. She just wanted to go out with me and talk, and I would take her around the hospital in that wheelchair, I remember, in her blanket, and I would take her around. I got pulled to another unit, so I was working just 1 floor above her. That unit would actually know that I was there and would call the unit I was on, and they would call and say, Ingrid is giving attitude to the constant, could Jasmine come down, because she only listens to Jasmine, blah blah blah. So she just, it was at a point where she just wanted me, like, she didn't want these other people. So I remember that, like, one of the last memories I have of her, I walked into the room and I was like, Ingrid, they called me. They said that you're not acting good with your constant. She's like, well, he's not my constant. And he just sits there. And I was like, oh my god, And I just remember looking at the guy and I was like, I'm so sorry. And I remember at this time, like, she was always craving ice cream and coffee. She just wanted her Timmy's coffee and an ice cream. Like, that's all she was craving. But it was very hard to give it to her because at this time, like, she was sometimes NPO or she wasn't, like, or she had exams, so she couldn't. And we have coffee in the units, but she didn't want our coffee. She wanted the Timmy's coffee. But the problem with the Timmy's coffee is that she couldn't have the, but I remember I'd be like, I can't get you that, Ingrid. I said, but I can get you a coffee. She's like, oh, I'll take that dirty water if I have to. And I remember I would just laugh. Like, she was so sassy and like I loved her to death. So I am on my offset and I come back to the unit and she had bruises all up in here in her neck. I didn't say anything to her. Just came in and I did my crossword puzzles with her. She loved cutting out pictures from magazines because it reminded her about her days back in when she was a teacher. She would do that for her student. I just ignored what was on her neck. I knew at that point she was decreasing. I don't know what I was doing on that unit. I had to go grab something, I think borrow some supplies from that unit, and I walked by her room and I remember a flower is for us it means palliative. It means someone's coming is close to death and or they've passed, and it means that we have to be respectful going in that room. I remember I walked over and I saw her in the bed because her daughter was there visiting her and had got her Timbits and stuff, but she was like out of it at this point. Like, she was in and out, like she was talking nonsense, and I just go, do you remember me? And she goes, yeah, I remember you. With her eyes closed, she goes, I remember your voice. And I remember I looked at her daughter and she goes, are you Jasmine? And I'm like, yes. And she's like, oh my god, my mom has not stopped talking about you. And I was like, and my heart, I remember it like made me feel so good because it made me feel like I finally was able to do what I always wanted to do with my great grandmother. But I was so young at that time. Next day I worked again, but I was again on the unit above her. And I came down in the morning and she didn't look good. And I remember asking our charge nurse, I was like, what's going on with Ingrid? She's like, she doesn't look like she's gonna make it till the end of the day. And I was like, I remember I even went and I never actually told anyone this. I actually went to the washrooms outside the unit and I actually cried a little because I had just had this deep connection, and that's how I am as a person. When I connect to somebody, I connect. Her daughters come out and something just came over me. I don't know. I even told my charge after what I did so that I wouldn't get in trouble, but I followed them. And when I followed them, I had the intention to speak to them, but they saw me first. And she just looks at me and she goes, Jasmine, she's like, the one that I had talked to, her daughter that I had talked to the day prior, it was like, Jasmine, my mom was so grateful for you. Thank you. I didn't know you did all that. Like, I can't believe you walked her around the hospital. Like, you would actually come from other units to talk to her. Like, the nursing staff told us. And I was like, yeah, I had a really good connection with your mom. And I told them how she reminded me of my great grandmother and everything. And I had this responsibility that I felt, and I turned to them and I said, one of you guys just had a baby. And she looked, the one on the, I remember her other sister just starts crying. She's like, me. And I said, she would tell me all the time how she just wanted to meet her new granddaughter. Like, she was so angry. And I remember, and I said, but I just want you to know that she would tell me that, like, she was always going to watch over your granddaughter because she never got that moment. And her daughter just, like, not lost it, but started tearing up. And then I go and I said, and I want you to know that, like, because right before Ingrid had passed, I had actually got her ice cream and we actually had gotten her coffee. Daughter just goes, you did? I was like, yeah. We got that for her. And then I looked at them and I said, I want you to know that your mom adored you. Like, she never stopped talking about how proud she was of the women you've become, because that's all Ingrid ever talked about was her family, her kids. Like, she was just so, I've never seen such a person so grateful for her family. So to finish off story number 3, daughters left. I didn't finish there. I felt like I had to say goodbye. I don't know, people, this is a blessing and a curse. Even my boyfriend says it. I connect with people on such a deep level. I actually went not working on that unit. I actually asked the charge and I said, do you mind if I get Ingrid ready to go down? I helped a little sponge bath. I got her gown and everything. I went down with the porter to the morgue and I signed Ingrid out. These 3 stories are, I want to say, my pre-nursing stories that have really pushed me and driven me to become such a good nurse because of these 3 people that have just completely changed my life. They're just now in my heart, but I honestly owe so much to them. I wish I could thank them every day for all the experiences they gave me, the lessons. They're my nursing stories, and I hope that it gets you guys excited to get in the field and feel what I feel. I can't wait for you future nurses to feel what it's like to build these friendships and just have these moments. And I'm so excited for you guys to experience this. It really impacted someone's life. No one can take that away from me. That feeling is unmatched. Those are my stories, and it was so nice to actually sit down and just do a chit chat video. We'll see you guys in my next video. Jesus Chris. Oh my god. Bye guys.